So I had spoken to a Solana OG once, and he said that the religion of Solana is to ship and ship hard, which is something to think about. Next up, we have Kaan Uzdogan from Sourcify and Grant Worker talking about Argot, the Argot Collective, a credibly neutral home for Ethereum core infrastructure.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm Grant, and this is Kaan. And we are here on behalf of the Argot Collective, which is EF spinout in its later stages of formation. And we're here to tell you about this new spinout. So first of all, I'm curious if I could get a show of hands from the audience just to see how many people are familiar with these EF spinouts. It could be Argo, it could be GeoDayWork, or it could be Powder. Has anyone heard of these? Okay, not many. So this is good to know. So the EF, it's following through with this subtraction philosophy, and people from the EF are kind of spinning out into their own organizations and seeking their own long-term sustainability. That's what this is about. So about Argo, our ethos is all about open source software related to Ethereum and democratic organization. So as mentioned, we're an EF spinout, so right now it's just EF personnel. There's 25 of us, and we all focus on this specific domain of languages and language tooling and formal verification tools. Let's see. Right now we're kind of 1 foot in the EF and 1 foot in our new organization. And the new organization, it's a Swiss association. We've got our legal entity registered, and we're working on setting up our bank accounts and multi-signature, and finalizing the fundraising terms with the EF, or initial grace period grant terms with the EF. This is better. That covers that slide. So these are the projects that we work on. We have the first two are formal verification tools, HEVM and ACT. And then we've got 2 smart contract languages, Fee and Solidity. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Solidity. That's our most high-profile software project, and most of the members work on Solidity. Then we've also got ETHDenver and Sourcify. Sourcify is a open source and open data source code verification service, and ETHDenver is a new debugging tool for EVM. So why are we doing this? Again, it's because of the subtraction philosophy. You've probably heard this a lot. If you want to learn more about the subtraction philosophy, you can go to ethereum.foundation/philosophy and read about it there. Also, Aya gave a presentation at DevCon where she explained the subtraction philosophy and then also talked about Argo and other spinouts. And the goal is to create multiple credibly neutral organizations within the ecosystem. So now let me tell you about our governance model. So in most traditional organizations, you have a management structure where people manage and tell you what you can and can't do, determine how funds are spent, who gets hired, who gets fired. At Argo, we have sort of like a decision framework, sort of like an operating system, maybe you want to think about it that way. But we have this formally written decision agreement, and we make decisions based on this. And we'll get into more details on how that works. It's a consent-based decision framework, so it's not like majority rules. It's a little bit more nuanced. By being consent-based, there's less fatigue from the members when it comes to participating in the governance structure. Yeah, and also just to note, we're trying to keep the size small. Right now it's 25 of us, and we're probably not going to grow too quickly. We have the projects that we've been working on, and we're going to continue working on them, and we'll create more projects gradually over time and change things, but as of right now, we just want to keep it small and make sure that we can work at this scale. So yeah, a little bit more about our governance model. We have 5 decision types. And these were, we learned a lot from the Inspiral Foundation, if any of you have heard of them. They wrote a handbook that describes how you create an organization like this that has this democratic governance model. Yeah, and we looked at their decision agreement and initially copy and pasted, but we've made a lot of modifications to it. And we'll continue making modifications to it. You can modify the governance model using the governance model. Yeah, so a couple examples. We have a standard decision, which could be starting a contract with someone, maybe giving a grant to someone. And yeah, this is kind of an example of the consent-based voting system because it doesn't require a majority. It just requires that not so many, it's not disagreed with so much and no one's blocking it. That's all that matters. If a few people say no on it, it's really not a big deal. They still, by not blocking it, they're giving consent to the decision. And so far, it's worked pretty well. Another example, quorum. This is something that would be something that has very serious consequences. Yeah, and that requires a lot more participation. Yeah, and we will be publishing these at some point soon. The decision agreement, that is, and then also, other details about our operations. Yeah, so why this governance model? It's just aligned with our core values, I think on an individual basis. And also it's in line with our organizational ethos of being democratic. Ultimately, you just have to decide on a governance model. Decisions need to be made, and you need to have a way of making decisions. And we started from this clean slate, and we were able to do whatever we wanted, and this is just what we came up with. Another nice thing about this is that everyone can make their voice heard. Having participated in the corporate world and being at the Ethereum Foundation, decisions are just kind of made in these environments, whether you like it or not. And I think it's really cool that there's this set time for decisions to go through, and people can voice their opinions. And a lot of times you get things that people just say, everyone says yes on it, and then one person comes through, and they block it, and they're like, hold on, guys, there's something that we need to consider here. I think that's really cool, and that sort of feedback doesn't really make it into the minds of managers typically. Yeah, so now talking about funding and sustainability. So we're working out the terms of an initial grant with the EF that will get us through for a few years. And yeah, we've also been working on fundraising ourselves. The biggest example of this is the OP RPGF rounds. Yeah, we've raised over $1 million OP so far. And we do it on a project basis. Just to talk a little bit about this quickly, with the way that these fundraising things, whatever you call them, RPGF, things like that, things of that nature, the way that it works, you apply on a project basis. And so members of the teams working on the projects will individually go and submit a funding application, and then that money goes back to the Treasury, and it's managed, again, under the democratic governance framework, which it's kind of cool because it gives feedback on how much the community values your projects. So yeah, and if our no strings attached fundraising doesn't work out, we can look into consulting, things that won't affect our credible neutral stance. And there are certain things that we will not do, like token or equity sales, or closed source data monetization. hand it over to Kaan.
Yeah, so I'll be taking over the rest of the slides and giving you an overview how our day-to-day look like currently in Argo. Before that, again, introducing myself, my name is Kaan. I'm working on a project called Sourceify, open source and open data source code verification. Going back to Argo, so we organize ourselves within Argo and we form working groups. And most of the administrative tasks and the processes are conducted by these working groups. And where necessary, we will be outsourcing most of the operations. For example, payments, expenses, travel, organization, when these align with our core values. So we, of course, our main focuses are our technical projects, and we want to keep our overhead minimal. And besides the software we'll be using, and we want to use the software that are more aligned with our values. In that sense, we won't be using Gmail. We will be using Fastmail instead, no Google Drive, instead CritPad and HackMD. And for the chat, we are using currently Matrix. And for calls, we are using Jitsi instances. We are having weekly and bi-weekly all-hands meetings where we discuss the matters and also gather and see everyone in one place. But in general, all of the processes are not so much involved with the rest of the collective working groups and projects themselves, self-organize and handle the tasks. We will be doing a 4-day work week. Currently, we're not doing that, but in a 4-day work week schedule, we'll be doing a maximum of 130 hours. And everyone will be having full flexibility in invoicing hours. So that means if you want to work less or if you have other stuff to do, you can invoice less and you're getting a less salary that week, that month, but it's capped at 140. And above all, we have an equal hourly pay for all. So regardless, every 25 members will be having an equal pay. And being a global organization, it's quite important to have in-person meetings. We will be having at least one offsite per year. The last one we had in Phuket during DevCon Bangkok. The other one will be happening in a couple of months, probably in Europe. And we will try to keep close ties within this organization because we believe having a close group that knows each other well is really important to this whole democratic process to work. And as Grant also mentioned, we will be doing our decisions and voting on Lumio. So talking about Lumio, I'll be giving a couple visual examples of how decisions and processes look like. For example, you can see here in our Lumio instance, we have an infrastructure policy and mandate. This is a fairly easy task put forward by the infrastructure working group, mainly outlining what software we want to use, what values we want to look for when deciding on software, and the rest of the execution is left to the infrastructure working group. As you can see, out of 25, we have 16 people saying yes, and this vote passes unanimously, and this is a standard decision here. The next one is regarding a contractor for the Solidity language, Solidity project. In that case, this voting is put forward by Daniel. And as you can see here, most of the people abstains because they just leave the decision to the Solidity team, and the rest of the Solidity team says yes, and this decision passes with this certain amount of votes. And here you can see the graph of how many decisions and votings we have made. The spike here is the biggest problem in the computer science, is naming. Trying to decide on the name of Argo. We had a lot of votings and had some fun, let's say. But over time, you can see we have a good number of votings and have a good number of decisions without causing voter fatigue. So we also don't want to do so much votings and vote and discuss every single stuff and get tired over time. This is how our chat looks like, and also an overview of some working groups. You can see there's a working group and chat for offsite planning, communications, legal risks, infrastructure, even for the DevCon talk that we had with Grant, and yeah, other stuff that you can see. We also take the transparency really seriously, and it's one of our core values. And with that regard, we want to publish our governance framework and our handbook to explain how we are making decisions and also how we are running Argo day to day, and also for the others to benefit from that as we benefited from Inspiral Foundation and other institutions. We want to also publish reports on financials, budgets, our roadmaps, and our funding terms. And of course, all of the work we are putting as Argo is always and will be fully open source. And in general, we think there's a lack of transparency in the ecosystem. And as Argo, we really want to be a leading example in that front. Finally, about the future of the collective, our goal is to spin out by the first half of 2025. Things are taking time, of course, but we want to meet this goal. And in general, the existing projects are secondary, but the overall goal of the collective is become a credible neutral home for the core infrastructure and languages and research of Ethereum ecosystem. Over time, we'll be possibly giving away grants. We'll be supporting other projects where we think it's necessary. Especially, this is a highly technical group of people, and they will be able to see what specific needs are required in the ecosystem in the technical terms. And we want to give away grants and support projects and people that should be supported. But of course, over time, we'll be starting new projects. We'll be retiring new projects. But in general, we want to emphasize that we'll continue maintaining Solidity until as long as it's considered useful and an important project in the ecosystem. And lastly, we want to become an example of democratic governance for the community and to be able to show how can such an organization be run and that this is indeed possible to do. So thank you, everyone, for listening. If you want to learn more, visit our website. You can read our manifesto and our announcement post for a detailed explanation. And feel free to follow us on GitHub and Twitter and Farcaster. We have 2.5 minutes, so we can take a quick question, I guess, if there's any. I guess we don't have an audience mic, but if you can shout, we can have one question. If there is none, feel free to find us after the talk, and thank you for your attention.